Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking something that is going to completely flip how you view a really famous personality archetype. We're looking at the psychology of the Taurus. Now, whether you're super into astrology or you just have a friend who fits the classic Taurus description perfectly, you've definitely heard the stereotypes. But what if the number one trait we've all been taught to criticize is actually a brilliant psychological survival mechanism? Well, let's break down exactly how this works. To really wrap our heads around this, I want you to picture something. Imagine you're standing right in the middle of a dense forest. A massive storm is rolling in. The wind is just howling, and all the trees around you are bending violently with every gust. Some are snapping. Others are getting uprooted entirely. But right there in the center, there's this one massive oak tree that barely even moves. Its roots run so unbelievably deep that it just holds steady, while absolutely everything else is thrown into total chaos. That unmoving oak, it's literally the perfect metaphor for the Taurus archetype weathering the unexpected storms of life. So, let's talk about the stubbornness myth, because this archetype is hugely misunderstood. See, from the outside looking in, society doesn't exactly appreciate that unmoving nature. In fact, it gets heavily criticized. We've all heard this exact quote. Taurus is the most stubborn sign. They simply refuse to change. Your friends probably joke about it at dinner when someone won't try a new restaurant, or family members complain when they're trying to change holiday plans at the last minute. Even traditional astrology books will parrot this exact same frustrating sentiment. They paint the Taurus as rigid, inflexible, just unreasonably obstinate. It gets treated as this major character flaw, rather than a strength. Okay, let's dive into this, because we really need to ask a crucial question that completely turns this stereotype upside down. What if everyone has just been looking at it the wrong way? What if a Taurus isn't stubborn because they have some irrational fear of change, but rather because they're fundamentally built to survive it? Let's actually look at the mechanics of this mindset. Moving into the psychology of loss aversion, this is where we really rethink that resistance. To truly understand this, we actually need to put the astrology books down for a second and look at modern psychology. Psychologists know that every single one of us develops coping mechanisms to deal with uncertainty, right? Some people react by making incredibly fast, impulsive decisions, just kind of hoping for the best. Others run away from risk entirely. But the Taurus archetype aligns with a very specific, heavily researched psychological principle called loss aversion. Basically, it's a phenomenon where the pain of losing something hits you way harder than the joy of gaining something new. Think about it. Losing $50 stings a whole lot more than finding $50 feels good. This concept perfectly matches the Taurus archetype. Their behavior isn't rooted in negativity or laziness. It's actually a highly sophisticated, deeply ingrained form of risk management. Now, think about the profound divide in human thinking when you're faced with a really high-cost decision. Imagine an opportunity comes up to change careers, or maybe end a comfortable but kind of stagnant relationship, or move across the country to a new city. Most people get immediately caught up in the thrill of what they could gain, the impressive new salary, the spark of romance, the exciting nightlife. But a Taurus, they naturally and immediately notice what they could lose in the transaction. They're thinking, what happens to my seniority at work? What if I lose my local support network? They are rapidly calculating these hidden costs that everyone else is just completely ignoring in the heat of the moment. Which brings us to the Taurus decision process. It is highly deliberate and definitely not impulsive. Because they have this deep-seated risk management going on, their approach to making choices is vastly different. From the outside, sure, to a casual observer, they might just look frozen or purely stubborn. But inside their mind, something incredibly complex and active is happening. It basically looks like this. Step 1, observe. They silently take in the environment, the variables, the data. Step 2, think. They process everything they've observed against their internal metrics of safety and risk. And then step 3, commit. And this is the absolute key. Once they reach that third step and genuinely believe something is right, changing their direction isn't easy. That's the part people lazily label as stubborn, completely missing the rigorous work of the first 2 steps. Let's actually break down what that thinking phase entails, because it is intense. Before a decision is ever finalized, a Taurus is working overtime in the background. They're gathering information from every possible angle. They meticulously weigh the risks against the rewards. They imagine all the possible outcomes, almost like a chess master thinking 5 moves ahead. And get this, they do this for weeks or even months. By the time everyone else finally notices a decision has been made, the Taurus has already done all the exhausting background work. This incredibly patient approach is exactly why they make such dependable friends, loyal partners, and reliable coworkers. When they commit to you or to a project, they fully expect it to last.
So, let's talk about building a safe foundation and the real value of stability.
This brings us right to the core of what they're trying to achieve with all this deliberate thinking. They aren't resisting change just because they hate progress. They just understand the immense, tangible value of stability. Just think about this for a second. If you were building a house, would you rip out and replace its concrete foundation every few months just because some new architectural trend blew up on social media? Of course not. That would be a complete disaster. You know for a fact that a strong, permanent foundation is exactly what gives everything built above it a fighting chance to survive and last. For a Taurus, their version of a concrete foundation is made up of their daily routines, their deeply trusted relationships, and their carefully laid long-term plans. These patterns aren't boring, they're structural. They create this necessary bubble of safety in a fundamentally unpredictable world. Sticking to the same morning coffee routine, staying close to the same core group of friends for a decade, or carefully saving money year after year, they are actively building a life that absolutely will not collapse when the wind starts howling. But what happens when stability becomes resistance? Let's look at the limits of this strategy. We definitely have to look at the whole picture here. Our sources make it very clear that every single survival strategy, no matter how brilliant it is, has its limits and its vulnerabilities. The Taurus approach is no exception. Let's jump back to our first metaphor. That massive oak tree is an amazing place to wait out a storm. But imagine if you simply never left the safety of that tree. Eventually, the storm passes, the sun comes out, and if you just stay huddled at the trunk out of pure habit, you're going to miss every single road leading somewhere new. For Taurus, holding on to a situation for too long, whether that's an unfulfilling job or an outgrown relationship, can silently mutate from profound wisdom into harmful resistance. It quietly holds them back from necessary growth. Which means it's time for redefining Taurus's strength and really knowing when to move. The challenge for the Taurus isn't learning how to stand firm. They are already the undisputed masters of that. It's about redefining what their strength actually looks like in everyday practice. Based on all the psychology we've just unpacked today, I think it's time to permanently drop the word stubborn from our vocabulary when we talk about this archetype. Instead, let's use these alternatives: steadfast, persistent, strategic. Ironically, the strongest Taurus isn't the one who never, ever changes. It's the one who recognizes that adapting at the precise right moment is actually the best way to protect what matters most. They use their immense strength to move intentionally. So, here is the crucial takeaway. Behind that famously calm, seemingly immovable exterior is a mind that is constantly, quietly asking one profound question. Will this choice create a better future or put everything I've built at risk? That is not simple stubbornness, my friends. That is a highly sophisticated survival strategy built on patience, careful thinking, and an unwavering desire for lasting security. So the next time you encounter that unmoving oak tree, you really have to ask yourself, what storm are they preparing for that you haven't even noticed yet?